Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars, topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Steven Melendez, and I'm going to be bringing you the latest and greatest in basketball news from around the NBA. Welcome back, everyone, to your favorite basketball podcast. We've got a lot of amazing things to talk about today. We have the trade deadline just passed, so you know this is going to be a very fun, packed show full of trade talk. A lot of those deals signed. We got some guys in the buyout market that are, a lot of contenders are going to be looking at to sign. We're going to be talking all about all of that first here in this basketball podcast. Second, I want to talk about, we've gotten a couple games into that second half of the season. I think it's been about 2-3 weeks since that All-Star weekend, and I want to talk about, which are the hottest and coldest teams that have come out of the break. I remember talking about which teams I thought were going to really explode. We're going to see if I hit on any of those teams. Third, we're going to be talking about predictions for this weekend. We have a lot of big games coming up this weekend. I'm going to give you guys my predictions, my thoughts, who's going to win each game. And then last, we're going to be talking about the top 10 power forwards in the NBA this season. This was honestly the toughest list I've had to come up with because of all of them, even point guards was a bit easier. It wasn't as stacked. This power forwards list is absolutely stacked. It's like from 1 to 10, it's just some of the best players on their teams. I didn't even think about how incredibly stacked the power forwards are this season. And I guarantee you there's someone on this list you're going to be extremely surprised that is put on the power forward spot, because I sure was when I saw it there. So let's just get started. We're going to be talking about the trade deadline, all the incredible deals that were, put together right before that 3 o'clock deadline. And let's get right into it, man. So Boston, first deal we're going to talk about is Boston trading Daniel Theis to Chicago in a 3-team deal. And before I keep going, I want to make sure I'm not going to be talking about the big deals first. I'm going to, trickle down to that. We'll get there very soon, but I definitely want to talk about those smaller deals that kind of involve money. A team maybe not wanting to sign a guy at the end of the season. So the Daniel Theis move to Chicago, it was an interesting one because I don't really feel like Boston got much back in that deal. They got Moritz Wagner, Luke Cornett, which is like, all right. Mo Wagner can hit the 3 a bit, but they're not really going to fill into those plans for Boston. Maybe if I don't think Cornett at all. Maybe if Wagner finds a way to get some time and he shows that he can space the floor very well, then I could maybe see it. But I didn't really like this return for them. Giving up Daniel Theis, who I think would have been a very solid backup big to, I understand they're playing Tristan Thompson. It's a big mess there at that front court position. And giving up Theis, I understand it's because of the money. They didn't want to have to pay him at the end of the season since he's an unrestricted free agent. But, how much is Daniel Theis really going to cost you? Maybe they're going for someone big. Maybe I don't know who they could be looking at. I know in this buyout market, they're certainly looking at Andre Drummond to try to bring him in and be that piece in the middle, especially with all those shooters around him. That could be dangerous. But yeah, I see this mainly as a money move, trying not to, to pay him at the end of the season. But I like Daniel Tice's tenure at Boston. I thought he was a pretty solid big, someone that you can switch around. I mean, he's not going to lock down any perimeter players, but he was quick enough to be able to switch out, and he was a big body. And obviously, another thing, this move makes space for Rob Williams. The young big that they have there that has been shown a lot of great flashes. So I understand, in that sense, they weren't going to start Rob Williams over Daniel Tice with what he's done here and just what he meant to that franchise. But now with Daniel Tice gone, you can easily have Tristan Thompson. I mean, maybe they continue to go too big starting lineups, which I don't like at all, especially since neither of those can shoot the ball. It just wouldn't make any sense. So I'm sure they're going to probably move Tristan Thompson to the backup spot, have Rob Williams as your starting big, and see if that can, unlock some things for that team, because they have certainly been inconsistent this season. And for the other teams, I mean, Washington got in there to, kind of make this a 3-team deal. They get Daniel Gafford, Chandler Hutchinson, some young players, maybe that they can kind of roll the dice on. Hopefully they can try to, make something there. I mean, Gafford's got some potential. I mean, he showed some good things in Chicago, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to really amount to anything. And then for Chicago, they get Daniel Tice, which, is obviously a great backup big to Vucevic. I mean, you could do a lot worse than Daniel Tice as your backup 5. And yeah, they pretty much completely revamped that front court with Vucevic and now Daniel Tice being added there. They also got Troy Brown, decent young player. Javonte Green, not really sure much about him, but and on top of that, they got cash from both Washington and Boston. So, they kind of get, I think they get the positive end on this deal because they get a pretty solid backup big that has some playoff experience, and they're pushing for that playoff spot, obviously. And we'll get to that other big deal for them pretty soon. Another trade, Dallas adding some shooting by picking up J.J. Riddick. Didn't really have to give up much. I mean, obviously, we know J.J. Riddick's getting way up there in age. Pretty sure he's like 36 right now. And they get J.J. Riddick, Nicola Melli, and they give up James Johnson and a second-round pick as well as some cash. And I don't know. I don't really think it's that big of a trade. I mean, yes, J.J. Riddick is a very solid veteran. But I don't know, Dallas has been very inconsistent this season. They can surely they can use it, especially with a lot of those guys in Dallas playing pretty inconsistent around Luka Doncic. Like, they can certainly use a veteran presence that has been there and done that, and JJ Redick is absolutely that. So you can never have enough floor spacing. I've always said that, especially in this NBA. And Nicola Melli also adds that. He's a pretty solid floor spacer for a big, and I feel like that's going to be a pretty solid add for this team. Don't think it moves the needle at all. I'm pretty sure Redick is going to continue to come off the bench and pretty much play as that, role player who can also be a pretty solid locker room presence. But then New Orleans, I mean, they pick up a pick, so that's pretty solid, some cash. But man, James Johnson, the black belt, along with Zion Williamson and Steven Adams, I mean, nobody is going to be messing with New Orleans Pelicans this season, even though, I mean, they've been playing so inconsistent. They're out of the playoff picture for as of now, despite having two of the best young players in the league, and Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. But man, they got some tough players on that team now with James Johnson heading over to New Orleans. Now this is a big deal, one I obviously want to talk about on this show. Miami adding Victor Oladipo to help with that playoff push. I mean, they pretty much got this man for nothing. Like, facts. Literally zero. They gave up Avery Bradley and Kelly Olynyk and a swap rights in 2022, which is probably not going to even be used because in 2022, that's the Nets pick. There's no way the Nets are going to have a worse pick or a better pick than the Houston Rockets. So that pick swap isn't even going to be used. And like, when you really think about it, the fact that Houston could have had Karis LeVert or even Jared Allen in that trade for James Harden, and they chose to stick with Victor Oladipo, and you get back Kelly Olynyk and Avery Bradley and a 2022 pick swap that you're not going to even use. It's just, it's an absolute debacle for the Houston Rockets. They're being run to the ground, as it really seems like it. Yes, they picked up some very solid player in Kevin Porter Jr. and they got Christian Wood, but man, that team is heading into a very long rebuild. They got a lot of work to do. They need to hope those picks from that Harden trade hit, because if it doesn't, that's going to be looked at as one of the worst trades in NBA history. It already kind of looks that way, but obviously you got to wait and see how those picks turn out. But I mean, for this trade right here, I mean, Victor Oladipo adds another playmaker, a decent wing, guard defender, someone that can guard ones and twos at a pretty solid level. I mean, obviously, he's not shooting very well this season, but again, he was at a place that, I said this because there's so many rumors this season about Victor Oladipo wanting out and wanting to come to Miami. So now that he gets what he wants, he's in a place that he's wanted to be since, I mean, as long as I can even remember. This probably gives him that motivation to finally play some of the best basketball he's ever had in his career. Obviously, I'm not expecting him to turn into the 2016-20, or I think it was like 2017-2018 Victor Oladipo. If I'm not mistaken, that was his all-star season where he pretty much led the Indiana Pacers to an incredible season. Obviously, he didn't do much in the playoffs, but still, he was by far the best player on that team. And, since the injury after that, he just has not been the same. So I'm hoping Victor Oladipo kind of finds his form here with the Heat, because he can be an easy second option behind Jimmy Butler, maybe even a third option behind Bam sometimes. But I think Bam is such a, passing big. He's not really trying to look for a shot too much, that, Victor Oladipo will certainly, come out and show up as a second option for this Miami Heat team. And on top of that, the best part is, okay, the Heat get their bird rights. The Heat get Victor Oladipo's bird rights, so they can sign him at the end of the season if they feel like, he's a great fit for them. And they gave up, I can't say this enough, they gave up practically nothing. Avery Bradley wasn't even playing for the Heat. He played, I think it was like 10 games for us this season because he's been injured for most of the year. And Kelly Olynyk, yes, he was a very solid player for us, but, we were able to get a replacement for him on someone I will talk about very soon. And it's just, I don't know, it just kind of feels like Victor Oladipo kind of fills a lot of holes that this team has. The perimeter defense, ball handling, the ability to make shots on their own. It's just a lot of good things there on that Victor Oladipo trade. Let's see, another trade we got. This one boggled my mind. Rajon Rondo heading to the Clippers in exchange for Lou Williams. I mean, I honestly just do not see it. They're betting that, I guess, Rajon Rondo in the playoffs is the kind of player that they need to really make that push for a championship. I just don't see it. Lou Williams is a perennial sixth man of the year. I know he's not having as huge of a season this year. I'm actually going to look up those stats real quick. Let's see. Lou Williams, he's averaging, 12, 2, and 3 on like 38% from the three-point line, but 42% overall. I mean, I understand he's not having that normal Lou Will type of season. He's having a low year. He's 34 years old. It's his worst points per game averages since his last year in Atlanta, so that's pretty funny. Now he's heading back, and I don't know. I do not see what they're looking for here with Rajon Rondo being adding. He's having such a bad season with Atlanta, barely playing, not adding that, what they wanted in that backup role, and now he's probably going to be the starting point guard for that Clippers team. And I mean, maybe that's what he needed, some good superstars around him, kind of like what it was with the Lakers last season. Because when he was playing in the finals, I hated when Rondo had the ball. I was like, oh, please get it out of his hands, because he was very, he was great. He was great in the finals. He always had, he was always one step ahead, and I guess that's what the Clippers are looking for here. But to give up Lou Williams, and it was just a swap, and it was just an exchange, Rajon Rondo for Lou Williams. And I guess Williams, there was a report that said that he was thinking about retiring after getting traded to Atlanta, but he's decided against it, and he's going to be sticking with Atlanta. And everyone is thinking it. It's so funny how in the bubble he got suspended because he was caught in Atlanta. I'm not going to say, but I think it was like a strip club. I'm not 100% sure. And now he's getting traded there. It's just kind of funny how it all goes full circle. But yeah, this kind of feels like Atlanta wins big time. They get a great guard off the bench. Rajon Rondo, the Clippers, I mean, we got to just see how it works in action. I mean, I just don't know. There's no spacing with Rondo. Obviously a great floor general, but we'll just have to see how that plays out. It could end up being a win for the Clippers. If playoff Rondo comes out, maybe he shows, Paul George how to become playoff P in a good way, and we'll just see how that goes. Another one, George Hill landing in Philadelphia. Austin Rivers going to OKC. I like it. Philadelphia was obviously pursuing Lowry very hard, but the Raptors were asking for far too much. This way, they still get a pretty solid point guard that I'm pretty sure is going to come off the bench still, and he's way cheaper. They give up Tony Bradley and 2 second-round picks, while OKC gives up Austin Rivers. New York gives my apologies. OKC gives up Terrence Ferguson. He goes to New York, while New York gives up Austin Rivers. So technically, this was just like I guess Oklahoma City getting some, a young big in Tony Bradley, and obviously just keep continuing to stockpile those picks. What is it, like 20-something picks they have now. So they're just piling that up. But in the end, Philadelphia gets a very solid point guard, veteran, playoff tested, and he's going to be very solid for them off the bench. He can shoot the three ball. I think he led the league in three-point percentage last season, and he can play some solid defense. He's still a pretty good player in that sense. So I like the move. It doesn't. I don't think it turns it moves the needle too much for Philly, but it's still better than no move because they certainly needed to get a floor general on that team, and George Hill can certainly provide that off the bench. A trade I was actually which I'm actually seeing that a lot of people were very confused by, was Norman Powell going to the Portland Trailblazers and Toronto getting Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood. Now, I mean, yes, what Norman Powell was doing before the trade deadline came was incredible. I mean, the man was put up like 40 in a game. I forgot who it was against. I mean, he is a great scorer, and he can play defense as well. And that's probably the biggest thing that he'll bring to Portland, some defensive presence in that backcourt. But where is he going to play? Like, I guess he can maybe come in as a small forward, an undersized small forward, and then they have maybe Derek Jones or Carmelo playing power forward, and then you got, hopefully Jusuf Nurkic can come back and play at center. But I don't know. It's just Gary Trent Jr. Is a very solid player. I like him, big time. And Rodney Hood, obviously, he's kind of just a throw-in to kind of, I don't know, I guess match money. I'm not really sure how those contracts work. But I think Toronto's getting the better side of this deal. I mean, Norman Powell, again, is a great player. But you're going to have to sign him at the end of the season. And I guess you're going to have to sign Gary Trent either. But Gary Trent is 6 years younger than Norman Powell? I know Norman Powell is a better defender than Gary Trent Jr., but I don't think he's a better three-point shooter. I think he adds, I don't know, but I guess that's what Portland was prioritizing, the defense. So in the end, I still think it's a pretty solid deal for both teams, but I think Toronto wins this one because they get a younger player, someone they can kind of not build around, but like add to this rebuild that they're kind of semi going through. Because obviously they got with Fred VanVleet, Siakam. They're adding Gary Trent Jr. to that. Obviously who knows what happens with Lowry at the end of the season, whether they re-sign him, they do a sign-and trade. I'm not sure on that. But anyways, next we got Miami Heat landing to the sharpshooting forward, Nemanja Bjelica. I think that's how you say his name. And I like this trade. They give Mo Harkless and Chris Silva, two guys that, again, were pretty much not playing at all for the Heat. For a man in Nemanja Bjelica that can space the floor. He's been playing inconsistent for the Kings, so I don't really look at his stats this year. But before this season, he was a career 39% shooter from three. So you get a pretty solid replacement for Kelly Olynyk, who was sent out on that Victor Oladipo trade. And I don't know, it's just, I like it. You get that option of a stretch big that you can put alongside Bam Adebayo, so you don't lose that option. And I think, someone said it perfectly on Twitter, Nemanja Bjelica is like a European Kelly Olynyk. That's all you need to know. It's a clear as day replacement for Kelly O, and I'm excited. I'm really excited. So we added a pretty solid stretch big, and it's going to be a good guy off the bench. I doubt he starts. I mean, maybe if they think they need more spacing in that starting five alongside Duncan Robinson, maybe because Victor Oladipo is going to be in that starting lineup with Jimmy Butler and Bam. And obviously you're going to have Duncan Robinson there, so it's like, who knows how they... The good thing is they have options now, and that's what I love about this trade here. Another big trade, you had the Denver Nuggets landing Aaron Gordon from the Orlando Magic. They give up Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, and a first-round pick. And now, I absolutely love this move for the Denver Nuggets. Aaron Gordon provides them a physical presence in that forward spot. I mean, someone that you can play alongside Nikola Jokic, because Nikola Jokic is great at spacing the floor, but so is Aaron Gordon. Well, I think he's averaging like under 40% from the three-point line, but it's like 37. I'm not 100% sure, but it's not terrible. It's not like he's a liability on that end. I'm actually going to look it up real quick. 37.5 from three. Not terrible, and he's averaging 4 assists, 7 rebounds, just under 15 points. So Aaron Gordon is an excellent option for that Denver Nuggets team, and I feel like he's going to fit in perfectly alongside Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic. I think it's a perfect match. Like, I absolutely love this move, and it almost made me put the Denver Nuggets as the winners of this trade deadline. And the fact that they had to give up Gary Harris, who has been underperforming big time after getting that contract from them. RJ Hampton, who has had kind of an underwhelming rookie season, and a first-round pick that's going to be a late first-round pick, no question. I don't know. I love this. It's such a perfect fit for this Denver Nuggets team. He adds defense to, for this team, a defense that this team just did not have at that power forward, or even I can say the front court positions. But now you have a guy that you can switch on, when you're in the playoffs, you can switch onto like a LeBron James, a Kawhi Leonard, a Paul George. It's so perfect, and I give this 100% an A for Denver. For Orlando, obviously, they're just trying to go young. Gary Harris at 26, it's an okay deal. I feel like they could have gotten more for Aaron Gordon, but I mean, whatever. They get a first-round pick out of it. RJ Hampton, someone that they can kind of slot next to Markelle Fultz. We'll see how it goes, but great pickup for Denver. Now we got another Boston trade. You got Boston adding Evan Fournier for 2 second-round picks. An absolute steal for the Boston Celtics. Fournier can slot right into that bench role and be an absolute microwave. I love this move for the Boston Celtics. I think this one moves the needle a lot more, obviously, than anything else. I mean, the other trade was Daniel Tice, so moving away. But, yeah, I like this move. I still don't think it's, like, going to put them into top 4 contention in the East, but it definitely bolsters their bench for a playoff run, and they only had to give up 2 second-rounders. The guy's a sniper off the bench, and he is a free agent this offseason, so Boston does have to decide whether they want to pay him or if this becomes a rental. But at the same time, the fact that they only gave up 2 second-round picks kind of doesn't give you like the pressure of having to sign him. So I love this move for Boston. Orlando, it's just, I feel like they could have gotten more for Fournier than 2 second-round picks. Like, you're not going to get like a young, even like a Semi Ojeleye, like something. Get something for him. But like, I guess 2 second-round picks is all they could get here. And then, of course, the biggest trade of the trade deadline is Chicago getting Nikola Vucevic from the Orlando Magic. Vucevic and Al-Farouq Amino go to Chicago, while Orlando gets Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter, and 2 first-round picks. Now, I honestly believe that there was going to be an even bigger deal than this for Vucevic, if there was even going to be one. Because the reports coming out were like they were looking for a whale of a load, to be able to move Vucevic. So I didn't think that offer was going to come. But then you're telling me that you can get Vucevic for Wendell Carter Jr., who has been an okay young big in the league. Obviously this is going to be like their center of the future. Otto Porter, who has a ridiculous, I'm sure that was just for contract matching. And then 2 first-rounders. I don't know. It just kind of feels like how were you able to hold on to Lauri Markkanen in exchange for Vucevic? I think that makes this front court one of the best sharpshooting front courts in the NBA right now. You got Vucevic, Markkanen, you got Zach LaVine. That offense is going to be ridiculous. It definitely makes the Bulls a whole lot better. You don't really give up much. I mean, Otto Porter hasn't really done much this season. Like, I'm literally going to go to his numbers right now. Otto Porter Jr., let's see, 10 points, 5.5 rebounds, 2 assists, 40% from 3. So obviously he's a decent 3-and-D player, but obviously he's not lived up to that contract. And you get Vucevic out of that, definitely a big move for the Bulls. They're certainly pushing for that playoff spot, like one of those secured playoff spots. They're not looking for play-in now. Getting Nikola Vucevic, they're looking for a guaranteed playoff spot. They're looking for top 6. And I think they can get it. I mean, dude, Vucevic is having an incredible season. The guy changes the team. I mean, his passing, his shooting ability. He's not the best defender, but he's not terrible at defending. And now Chicago has an all-star center, man, who can kind of score anywhere, get them 20 and 10 a night, and he's under contract for another 2 years, so it's reasonable. And he's getting paid, $46 million over the next 2 years, so that's not a bad contract. I'm loving that move for Chicago. I just thought Orlando can get more. I know 2 first-rounders and a good young center is a lot, but I was expecting Lauri Markkanen to be in this type of deal. And then I guess the last, I want to end it with that, but I guess I'll just say JaVale McGee going to Denver is also pretty big. Cleveland gets Isaiah Hartenstein and 2 second-round picks, one in 2023, 2027. And Denver gets a very solid backup big. He's one of the better backup bigs in the league. He showed that for Cleveland so far this season, and he's going to give Denver a big-time presence down low. He now has experience in the playoffs with the Lakers, with the Warriors, and Denver's going to be is going to have a very big presence in the front court now. With him, Aaron Gordon, I'm loving it. Denver, only because Denver had to give up more picks than the Heat, I'm going to put the Heat as the biggest winners of this trade deadline, giving up practically nothing to get players that are going to play big roles for them the rest of the season, while Denver had to give up a bit to get both JaVale and Aaron Gordon. So that's going to wrap it up for this segment. Make sure you guys stick around, because when I come back, I'm going to be talking about the hottest and coldest teams of the second half of the season so far, right after this.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. If you guys missed the last segment, we talked about all that trade deadline news, all the amazing deals that went down as the trade deadline got closer and closer. And now we're going to be talking about the hottest and coldest teams so far in the second half of the season. We've had about 10 or so games go by so far, and we've had a couple teams that have come out pretty hot, looking really good, ready for that second half, and we had some teams that have just not. And that's what we're going to be talking about here today. So I first want to start off with the coldest teams, and then I'll move on to the hottest teams, kind of end it on a good note. Let's get started. I want to first start my coldest teams of the second half of the season with the Boston Celtics, who have a 2-6 record since the All-Star weekend. They got losses against the Brooklyn Nets, Utah Jazz, Cleveland Cavaliers, Sacramento Kings, Memphis Grizzlies. Like, they've lost against some good teams. Bucks, Jazz, Nets. Those are some tough teams, especially when you got the Nets on the road, Bucks on the road. That's tough. But then you got Cleveland Cavaliers. Like, you should beat them. They gave up 117 points to the Cavs. They lost to the Kings at home. Only scored 96 points against that team. And then the teams that they beat, the only two teams they beat were the Houston Rockets. They destroyed them, 134 points on the Rockets. So, great win. Dominant victory. And then the Orlando Magic, who they also thoroughly dominated. They outscored them by I think it was like 16 points there. So they had some dominant victories, but then they had those losses against teams that they should beat. And they were close against the Bucks. They only lost by 2. But still, that game against Memphis, to lose to Memphis in overtime, oh my God. And the way that they lost that game was also extremely harsh. They should have won that game, and they gave it away again. It's just the main thing with the Boston Celtics this season has been their defense, and that is what's been really killing them in these losses. They gave up 121 points to the Brooklyn Nets. They gave up 117 to the Jazz and the Cavs. 132 to the Memphis Grizzlies. And I understand that game went into overtime, but 132 points with just 5 extra minutes played, like, come on. And then 121 to the Milwaukee Bucks. You are not going to win a lot of games when you are giving up that many points, and that is the case right now for the Boston Celtics. So they have certainly got to get their act together. I mean, they still got their players. They still got Jaylen Brown. They got, Jason Tatum, Kemba Walker, Marcus Smart's finally back. Rob Williams should start getting to play a lot more, but it's just like, man, 2-6 heading in to the starting off this second half is just such a poor start for them. And hopefully they can find a way to get it back together, because I had them picked as the team I felt was going to just really explode in the second half of the season. Clearly, so far, I am wrong. The next team I have on here is my Miami Heat. They started off the second half pretty strong. They got 4 straight victories, though. Those 4 straight victories were against mediocre teams. They beat the Magic. They beat the Bulls. They beat the Magic again away from home. And then they beat the Cavs. So those are not big wins. Those are like okay wins, like you should beat the Magic. You should beat the Cavs. The Bulls, that was a solid victory, especially since they allowed only 90 points in that game. And their defense, that has been the biggest thing that has allowed them to win these games. Allowed only 90 points to the Bulls, 103 and 97 to the Magic in both those games, 98 to the Cavs. Very solid. But then their offense has been so mediocre this season. They only allowed 100. They scored 111 against the Magic, 101 against the Bulls, 102 against that rematch with the Magic, 113 against the Cavs. Now, those 2 games, the 111, 113, that's decent, but that's still like close to league average. If it wasn't for their defense, they would lose a lot of those games. Especially the one where they scored 101 and 102. They were lucky to hold the Bulls and the Magic to 90 and 97 points. That's just facts. Then after that, the offense really took a snag, and it has been nothing but downhill for the Heat since. 85 points scored against the Memphis Grizzlies. They played great defensively, allowed only 89 points, but 85 points scored? Like, come on. That has been the MO for the Heat this season. Defense, incredible. Offense, disastrous. All their 3-point shooters have been on such a downslide this year, and it's just been very hard to just, overcome. Obviously, the addition of Victor Oladipo should help with the offense, but the efficiency that he brings isn't, all that. Hopefully, since he won't have to do as much, his efficiency will go up. But man, you look at these next couple games, they lost a back-to-back to the Indiana Pacers. They lost to the Suns. And even though it's a 10-point victory there, that game was a lot worse than it looked, than the final score shows. They lost to the Portland Trailblazers, also 125-122. That was a decent game, even though they allowed 125 points. They scored a lot, and that was without Jimmy Butler and Goran Dragic, which has been the case for the last couple games in Dragic's side. Butler has been playing. It's just been a mess for them on the offensive end. They just continue to just be inefficient on that end. And that's been the biggest issue for them. And now, as I'm recording this, they're losing to the Charlotte Hornets by I think it's like 25. They were down by 30 earlier, so they're going to be 4-6 by the time this recording is done. And yeah, it's just been a really tough second half to the season. And I also picked them to have a good start to the second half. And maybe with these new additions, maybe they add someone in the buyout market, they will turn it around. But man, after 4 straight wins, to come away with 6, what looks like to be 6 straight losses, is just, it's really disappointing. Another team that is really disappointed overall this season, the Toronto Raptors. Now, I mean, they have been poor for a while now, but you thought maybe, they come out of this in the second half of the season a little more energized, let's, because at the time they come into the second half of the season at 17-19. Not terrible. I mean, obviously not great, but, it could be a lot worse. They're not playing their games at home. They're playing in Tampa, so they're technically the Tampa Raptors. So it's a tough season for them. But they were about 17-19. That's okay, especially with that strength of schedule that they had in the first half, and they had a much easier strength of schedule now. So they're energized, right? They come out and have I think it's 6 straight losses, 7 straight losses, 7 straight losses to start the second half of the season. And these losses were not against the best teams in the league. They lost to, let's see, the first loss was against the Hawks, who are on you'll see them soon. The Charlotte Hornets, also a decent team. The Bulls, the Pistons, the Cavs, the Rockets. They lost to the Rockets, and then they also lost to the Jazz. But and the craziest thing is that the Jazz game was the closest contest that they had of all the other games. I mean, I guess the Atlanta Hawks was closer. They only lost by 1 there, but they lost by only 3 to the Jazz, lose by 18 to the Houston Rockets. Terrible. They were easily going to end up on this list. 1-7. They're the coldest team in the league right now. And again, I'm not picking the worst teams in the league, because we know that they're going to be bad. We know they're going to be cold. That's obvious. I'm picking the teams that you would expect to come out and looking good, yet they come out and disappoint in a big way. And that is what the Raptors have done in the second half of the season. And I would not doubt these losses piling up, had them influenced them to let go of Norman Powell. Maybe it was going to happen regardless, but I don't know. I'm surprised they held down to Lowry, but yeah, terrible, terrible start to the second half. And the craziest thing of it all is that they followed that terrible loss to the Rockets, with probably their best game of the entire season, with a 135-111 win over the Denver Nuggets. They looked amazing in that game. Amazing. They play the Phoenix Suns later tonight. I don't know what happens there. I think they're losing right now. They might end up losing that game, so it might end up being 1-8 in the second half of the season. But yeah, the Raptors have been by far the biggest disappointment so far this season, and it just continues to get worse and worse. Next, I got the San Antonio Spurs. Now, their record is not terrible in the second half, but compared to what you were seeing from that first half of the season, and what they were looking like heading into the second half, it's been poor. They entered the second half at 19-15. What was it? 19? Was it 19-15? No, it was 18-14. My apologies. And they ended up going and losing. They go 4-6 since then. And these losses, you're looking at a loss to the Dallas Mavericks, Philadelphia, which is that's a loss that you're going to see. The Bucks also lost, Hornets, and then 2 to the Clippers. Now, I understand these are all tough teams. Maybe the Hornets one, which they only lost by 3, they could be doing a little bit better. But again, I have them lower on this coldest list because they're not the coldest team, but they are certainly one of the colder teams in the league. And those wins weren't against big teams. They beat the Magic, they beat the Pistons, the Bulls, the Cavs. Those aren't crazy wins, and they didn't blow these teams out of the water. They won by 7 against the I thought it was 97-104. So they absolutely destroyed the Magic. 104-77. Big time win. They won by 10 against the Pistons, by 7 against the Bulls, by 6 against the Cavs. They need to do better, flat out, especially with the way they looked early on in the season. They've been exceeding expectations, and this second half, they're currently on a 4-game losing streak. Obviously, those 2 games against the Clippers look bad, And their offense has not been consistent. Kind of the same thing as the Heat. They're coming off 3 straight games that they have not been able to score over 101 points. That is not going to cut it. And when you got guys like DeJounte Murray, you got DeMar DeRozan, you got a lot of guys on that team. Lonnie Walker, they should be more energetic than this and better defensively, in my opinion. So, definitely the San Antonio Spurs on this list. And lastly, this might be a little bit of surprise, but I have to put them on this list because, and I'll talk briefly about them. Yes, they're missing a lot of big-time players for them, but I got the Los Angeles Lakers here. Started off the second half with 4 straight wins against the Indiana Pacers, Golden State Warriors, Timberwolves, and the Hornets. But now they've lost 4 straight against the Hawks, Suns, Pelicans, and 76ers. Now, yes, they are missing LeBron James. That just so happened to be in that Hawks game. So, no surprise that they have lost 4 straight since losing LeBron James. It really isn't. But still, if they're going to be one of the top teams in the league, they need to be able to win a couple. They should have beat that Pelicans team. I understand the Pelicans have a great young core, and maybe even, I don't know, it's just, and those are tough teams. Maybe I'm being a little harsh on them. Fine, I'm being harsh on them. But whatever. They're the defending champions. They beat my Miami Heat team, so I'm literally putting them as one of the least coldest teams. I mean, they're 4-4, but 4 straight losses. They clearly. They're run by LeBron James and Anthony Davis, which we've known this, and it's not a surprise. Star players, are super valuable. It's obvious. But I'm just saying, 4 straight losses for a team that won the championship last year. Obviously, re-energized in the offseason with guys like Dennis Schroeder, Montrezl Harrell. They got, Kyle Kuzma, who wanted a big-time contract, can't step up as a third option or as a first option when the first 2 options are gone. So, whatever. I'm putting them as the 5th team on my coldest list. Now we're going to move on to the hottest list. At number 1, I got the Atlanta Hawks. Main reason I have them here at number 1 is because nobody expected them to be this good with Nate McMillan at the helm. He's 8-2 since he took over. Huge turnaround for the Atlanta Hawks. Their offense has been incredible. Their defense has been pretty solid as well. They've held teams to under 100 points in 3 of the 8 games in the second half of the season so far. They've beaten the Raptors, the Kings, the Cavs, the Rockets, the Thunder, and the Lakers. Not crazy teams to beat. And they just recently lost 2 in a row to the Clippers and the Kings. So that's why they could have been 8-0, but they couldn't do it. I mean, Clippers, that's a tough game, although they only lost by 9, and they only lost by 2 to the Kings. So they've taken care of business against those teams that you expect them to beat. Like the Cavs, the Kings, the Raptors, the Thunder. And I can't believe I'm saying that the Hawks are expected to beat the Raptors this season with the way that they're playing. Even though that game was close, they only won by 1. But still, they have been huge. John Collins has been huge. Trae Young is playing well. Do they have DeAndre Hunter back? I didn't see that. Oh, wait. How do I get to that game? How do I get to the box score? Box score. Here we go. Do they have DeAndre Hunter back? They do have DeAndre Hunter back. But he obviously, is still going to take a little bit of time for him to get into a rhythm. Clint Capella has been absolutely killing it for this team. In that win against the loss to the Kings, he had 25 points and 17 rebounds. Absolutely incredible from Clint Capella. And he has been a huge, huge key to this Atlanta Hawks season. And that's why they're the hottest team in the league so far. Next, I have the Milwaukee Bucks, mainly because they have not lost a game in the second half of the season. So that's obvious that they're going to be on this type of list. They are currently taking on the Boston Celtics, and it looks like they might lose that game. So they'll be 7-1. But still, they beat the Celtics. They kicked the Pacers in the butt. I can't say any bad words here, but they beat the Philadelphia 76ers. That's a huge win. They beat the Knicks. They beat the Wizards twice. And they beat the Spurs. So they've got some quality wins there. And they've looked dominant. The only thing with the Bucks for me is that their defense just does not look the same as it did last season. Only one team they held to a pretty solid, or 2, I guess. The Philadelphia 76ers at 105 and the Knicks at 101. Their offense has been great. Every game except for that Philadelphia 76ers game, they scored over 120 points. So their offense is clicking on all cylinders as it has all season. They're 5th in offensive rating. Defensive rating, they're still 8th, but there's been cracks in the armor for the Milwaukee Bucks this season in terms of defense, and it's shown a couple times during this stretch. Even though they're winning the games, there are still some chinks in that armor. They definitely need to clear that up if they want to beat a team like the Brooklyn Nets in the playoffs. But still, right now, Milwaukee Bucks 7-0, possibly 7-1 by the time you guys are listening to this. But still, one of the hottest teams in the NBA right now. Next, we got the Philadelphia 76ers at 8-1 in the second half of the season. And this, honestly, I should probably put them number 1 because they've done this with no Joel Embiid, with barely any Ben Simmons, and Tobias Harris. I mean, man, what a season this man is having. And these aren't like crazy wins. They beat the Bulls, the Wizards, the Spurs, the Knicks twice. That got to be said. They lost to the Bucks in overtime. They beat the Kings, the Warriors, the Lakers. So, they've got some quality wins there. Only one loss to the Bucks, so that's not a bad loss. The Bucks are one of the top contenders in the East. So, and again, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that game was without Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, where is it? Come on, show me. Oh, they had Ben Simmons. Okay, they had Ben Simmons, but still, no Joel Embiid, literally the guy who is the leading candidate in the MVP conversation. I mean, maybe not anymore, but still, you know what I'm saying? Like, the man's been balling, and they don't have him, and they were still able to go toe-to-toe against the Milwaukee Bucks. It's just so incredible, the kind of turnaround that this team has had. I didn't think it was possible just by putting in Doc Rivers. Clearly, I was wrong. They have, it's been a 180. It's a different feel of this 76ers team. I mean, you knew they had the potential. Obviously, some of those roster changes, like bringing in Seth Curry, who's been injured for a lot of the season. Danny Green's been a solid addition. But, I mean, it's just, and obviously, Tobias Harris is having a much, much better season. But still, it's just very exciting to see what the 76ers have done. I'm not a 76ers fan, obviously, but still, you gotta enjoy what we're watching here. I mean, it's just some great basketball, and the 76ers, one of the hottest teams in the NBA right now. At number 4, I got the LA Clippers. They're 6-2 in this second half of the season. They've got wins against the San Antonio Spurs twice. They beat the Hawks. They beat the Hornets. They beat the Mavericks, and they beat the Warriors. They lost to the Pelicans. They lost to the Mavericks. I mean, they did get beat really bad against the Pelicans, and they also lost pretty bad to the Mavs. So, 2 bad losses there. But at the same time, they have been very, very tough to beat in this entire season. I mean, they have one of the best records in the entire NBA. And when you consider how they were looking heading into the second half, they had lost 3 straight to Milwaukee, Boston, and the Wizards. That was probably the worst loss of their season if you really think about it. And then they come out when they go 2-2 to start the second half, and now have rattled off 4 straight wins. And now they got a pretty tough stretch. They got the 76ers, the Bucks, the Nuggets, the Lakers in 4, and the Trailblazers and the Suns in 6 of the next, 7 games. It's going to be a very tough stretch for the Clippers, but if any team can do it, I mean, Clippers are one of the best in the league. They can certainly handle that. So at 6-2, they are definitely one of the hottest teams in the league. And then last, we got the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets are 6-2 in the second half of the season, and it's it's blowing my mind that they're doing this. First in offensive rating, which you would expect, but it's without Kevin Durant. That's just so incredible that they're able to do this without Durant. I understand they got James Harden, and Harden is an absolute monster. I get that, but Durant is the best player on this team. There is no doubt about it. But it's just so crazy that they're still absolutely wrecking teams. They beat the Trailblazers, they beat the Pacers, the Knicks, the Celtics. They got wins against the Pistons as well, the Wizards. Those aren't big wins. They do have a big loss to the Utah Jazz recently, so that's a big loss. But I don't think they had either of their big 3. Let me look at that box score. I feel like they didn't have any of them. Yeah, this was the game where James Harden, Blake Griffin, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, none of them played. So that's kind of like, I don't know what happened there. I don't know why they all sat. I don't think it was all injuries. I think they were maybe just resting their players. Let me just check if maybe it was the second half of it was the second half of a back-to-back, so I guess maybe they didn't want to, and the third game in 4 nights. So they probably just didn't want to play these players too much. Don't want to, tire them out too early in the second half. But still, it's just been a very strong season overall for the Nets. In my opinion, the leaders for the contending spot of this Eastern Conference. And I'm just wowed by what they're able to do night in and out, night out. Their offense, I mean, it's been league average over the last couple games, but still they do enough to win. And obviously the defense is an issue. They're one of the worst defensive teams. Obviously losing Jared Allen is going to hurt. But when you get Kevin Durant, I feel like even though he's mainly known for his offense, he is still a great defensive player. He has turned himself into that over the last couple years of his career, and he will make a difference for that defense. His length, his presence at the rim, and his ability to be able to move laterally very quick. So I like that team overall, and they are easily one of the hottest teams in the league. So that's going to wrap it up for my list. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Next, we got the biggest weekend games and the predictions for them right after this.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. If you missed the last segment, we talked about the hottest and coldest teams in the second half of the season so far. And now we're going to be talking about the predictions for the biggest games going on this weekend. I'm just going to go off about a few games. Maybe I'll talk about all of them. Who knows? Maybe we have enough time. But I'm just going to go over about the games on Saturday and Sunday. Maybe you guys hear about your favorite team. We'll see. But first, I want to talk about the New York Knicks versus the Milwaukee Bucks coming up this Saturday. That's going to be a very interesting game. I mean, you got the Bucks, obviously one of the hottest teams in the NBA right now. I've talked about them. It's 7-0, I think 7-1 now with the Boston Celtics loss. And the Knicks, one of the biggest surprises, over 500 right now, 5th in the East, one of the best defensive teams in the league. I believe they're number 1, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look at that. They're 3rd in defensive rating, but still, it's a dog fight every single game against the Knicks. They're always going to make you hustle and work for your buckets. But man, Milwaukee has really been killing it in terms of scoring points. So something's got to give in that game. And I love that matchup between Giannis Atentacupo and Julius Randle. It's going to be one that you're going to want to watch. Obviously, you got RJ Barrett playing pretty well this season, averaging 17.5 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. He's been doing a little bit of everything for that Knicks team. And you go down that roster. I mean, the Knicks have some pretty solid players, man. I love Mitchell Robinson, what he gives you in that in that front court. Reggie Bullock's been pretty decent, for almost 40% from 3. But I mean, obviously, this team goes as Julius Randle goes. And it'll all depend on him. If he can have a big night, then the Knicks have a chance. Even though I feel like the Knicks have a chance any night because of that defense. It's it's stifling. And the Bucks had that last year. It's still pretty solid defense, but it's just not at that same level. But you see the amount of players they got. Obviously, him and Chris Middleton have been killing it. Drew Holiday gives them a pretty solid third option, averaging 16 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. Very solid defense. Decent averages, too. I mean, 49% from the field, 38% from 3. Dante DiVincenzo, solid player. Brook Lopez as well. Bobby Portis has been very solid off the bench. Very underrated season. He's having, what is he averaging? 11 points, 7 rebounds on 54% shooting, 48 from 3. He's been low-key very solid for them. Byron Forbes as well, 45% from 3 this year. He's been playing pretty solid in his minutes off the bench. And I like the Bucks in this game, but I don't know why. I low-key feel like the Knicks are going to stifle that Bucks offense, make it tough for Giannis to get whatever he wants. Because, I mean, obviously, Julius Randle isn't a great one-on-one defender, but when you talk about Mitchell Robinson off the bench, in the middle of that paint, and then obviously Brook Lopez is not having the same, kind of three-point shooting season, shooting 33% from the three-point line. That's below average, really, in this league. So I actually believe that the Knicks are going to defeat the Bucks tomorrow night. It's going to be a tight game. It's not going to be a blowout, obviously, but it's going to be a fun game to watch. Definitely the best game to watch tomorrow night if you guys are thinking about watching some NBA basketball. What else? We got the Philadelphia 76ers versus the LA Clippers. That is going to be a fun one to watch. Clippers putting their home winning streak on the line. They have won 4 games in a row. Obviously, you got the 76ers without Joel Embiid still. But they obviously got, and I don't think they're going to have George Hill for this game yet. I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that. But they do have Ben Simmons. They do have Tobias Harris. And they have shown time and time again this season that they can win without Joel Embiid. It's incredible to say, but that is the fact. Tobias Harris having one of his best seasons of his career, averaging, 21 points, almost 8 rebounds, almost 4 assists, on very solid averages, 51% from the field, 41% from 3. The man is a bucket this season, and he's a great compliment to Ben Simmons and his incredible defense, his ridiculous playmaking, just his all-around play that he gives you night in and night out. 16 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. What is it? Almost 2 steals, 1.5 steals per game. And then you got Danny Green. I mean, even though he gets a lot of hate, I should say. He gets a lot of hate for, his, just what he did last season for the Lakers. And, he started off the season slow, so obviously a lot of people were on him, especially for the contract he signed. But he's been a solid player for them, man, giving them solid defense on the perimeter, a decent three-point option, 40% from the three-point line. And same thing with Seth Curry, man, 43, almost 44% from 3. And Shake Milton coming alive of late. Not going to lie, I mean, averaging 14 points for the season, 3 assists, 2 rebounds. I mean, he's been a solid player off that bench. Same thing for Matisse Thybulle, obviously Dwight Howard as well, as Maxey. Maxey as well, I mean, has been a good option as a rookie, and I like the 76ers team, man. It just has such a different feel this year, but then obviously you got the Clippers with 2 of the best wing defenders the game has ever seen in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Nick Batum, low-key having a solid season. Zubac, always underrated big in this league. Serge Ibaka's given them some solid minutes as a starting big for them. Reggie Jackson, spot starter, has been good. I don't think they're going to have Rajon Rondo for this game, but regardless, I don't think he'd start. And then Pat Bev, is he still out? He is still out. Man, that hurts, man, because Pat Bev adds a whole new dimension to this team as he, being able to shoot the 3 ball at least a decent clip. What was it? Well, he was shooting at 42% before this season ended in 29 games. So, I mean, to be able to do that and play the defense he does, obviously they're not going to have him, though, and I think it's going to be a tough game for the Clippers to win, even though they got their 2 strongest players. But it's like, I can't deny what the 76ers have done so far. Though, despite me saying that, I still believe that the 76ers are going to lose this game. The Clippers at home are a really, really good team. What's their record at home? Let me check that real quick. They are, what is it? Oh my God. Why isn't it letting me? Oh, I guess I can't do it here. I can do it here, though. Sorry, my apologies, folks. I should have had this ready for y'all. They're 15-6 at home. 15-6. They won 4 straight, and I feel like with Paul George, with Kawhi Leonard, it's going to be a very tough out for them there, and I just don't think the 76ers are going to have enough without Joel Embiid in this game. Obviously, they're going to need ridiculous games from Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris to even be, close. Because I think this game could end up being a double-digit victory for the Clippers. But we'll just have to see, man. And it can go either way, but I'm leaning towards the Clippers. I also like the Dallas Mavericks versus the New Orleans Pelicans. I think this is a very solid game between two of the best young players in the game, and Zion Williamson and Luka Doncic. Obviously, you got decent matchups in both ways. You got Kristaps Porzingis versus Zion. You got Luka Doncic. I don't know. I guess you can't really say him against Brandon Ingram. They play two totally different positions, but still, the top scorers. You got top inside guys. And this is going to be a shootout. I feel like both of these teams can score buckets in a lot of ways. What is it? The Mavericks 11th in offensive rating. You got the Pelicans at 7th. So you're going to see a lot of buckets, and both teams are not good defensively. So this is going to be a very high-scoring game. The thing is, for me, I always look at who is the best player on the floor. And that is always going to be Luka Doncic in this matchup. I just don't think the Pelicans have enough guys that can really stop them. Yes, they still got Lonzo Ball. Didn't give him away in that, in the trade deadline. They got Eric Bledsoe, who's having an okay season, not terrible. And then you got Josh Hart. They got bodies they can throw at them, obviously. But at the same time, and the funny thing is, these are the two teams that traded with each other. Obviously, Mavericks getting J.J. Riddick, New Orleans Pelicans getting James Johnson and a pick, but I just don't think anybody on this team can really stop Luka Doncic, and I think that's going to be the biggest difference in this game. But still, you're going to see a very close game, a very high-scoring game. It's just which one can make the buckets at the end. And obviously, I'm riding with Luka Doncic on that part of the game 10 times out of 10. So expect the Dallas Mavericks to win this game and move 5 games over 500. It's going to be a big game, and I'm excited to watch it. Let's see, do we have any other big games going on this Saturday? Got the Chicago Bulls and the Spurs. You got, maybe, will we see the new look Spurs at this point? I don't think so. I doubt it. I really do. But if you do, that would be exciting. That would be hella exciting, because you're going to get the the debut of Vucevic with the Bulls, even though they're 5 games under 500, 10th in the East. Obviously you're going to expect them to make a big push for one of those guaranteed playoff spots with that superstar center, or I guess you could say all-star center. But I think I'm leaning Spurs there. Because I like the matchups. Even though Zach LaVine's the best scorer on the floor here, I think DeMar DeRozan can match him shot for shot. I think he's one of the more underrated defenders, or one of the more underrated scorers in this league, I should say. DeJounte Murray can stick onto Zach LaVine pretty well and be a pretty solid defender there. Keldon Johnson's had a very underrated season, 13 points per game, 6.5 rebounds on decent averages, 47.5, or on decent percentages, I should say, 47% from the field. Jacob Poeltl as well, having a pretty solid season, as a spot starter. Lonnie Walker as well. He hasn't been really that explosive player that we were expecting. 11.5 points per game, 3 rebounds, less than 2 assists. Nothing crazy. They still got Rudy Gay, who was one of the guys I expected to get moved for sure in the trade deadline, but that never happened. And, you just look at the rest of the team. I think the Spurs, super underrated. It all starts with DeMar DeRozan. If the Bulls have Vucevic at this point, which I don't expect, I would obviously lean towards the Bulls, because I don't think anybody on the Bulls can stop Vucevic. Zach LaVine has guys that can be put on him. They got a lot of, quick guards that can, keep up with him, and they can double really well, and I think that would cause a lot of problems for LaVine. But Vucevic, nobody on this team can guard Vucevic. Poeltl, forget about it. Rudy Gay, forget about it. It would be a mismatch anywhere on the floor. And then obviously, even I guess Lauri Markkanen, but I don't think Lauri Markkanen's not, established yet. He's not as confident to really just take any shot he gets. Vucevic absolutely is. and he would change this game for this team. This is a game that if they got Vucevic, they win. That's why the Bulls are looking like, a low-key, contender in that, and not contender, but like, definitely a playoff contender for sure. So, but I'm still leaning Spurs at the moment. Obviously, we all have to see what happens there. I want to talk about that Celtics Thunder game. Celtics what am I trying to say here? They've been underperforming a lot in the second half of the season. They've lost 4 straight, I believe, and have just been playing poor. I mean, they're 3-6 now in the second half. I believe they beat the Milwaukee Bucks tonight, but I mean, they have been performing just very poor, very, very poor. And yes, they got 2 of the best players on the floor. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, those are going to be your best players on the floor. Thunder are not looking back, even though, that's right, they don't got Shai Gilgeous. I forgot about that injury. Oh, this is going to be all Celtics. There's no way that the Celtics, if the Celtics lose to the Thunder without Shai Gilgeous, oh my God, that would be a new low for the Celtics this season. That would be a new low for the Celtics this season, but still, I don't see it happening. I'd be extremely surprised if the Celtics lose this game, even though it is away, right? Yeah, this is in Chesapeake Energy Arena, so it is an away game for the Celtics, but still, they're going to have, probably the 3 or 4 best players on the floor here with Kemba, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and I can even say Marcus Smart would probably be the best player on this Thunder team without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander there. I mean, you look at the roster, aside from Shai Gilgeous, I guess you got Dort. Al Horford gives you some solid minutes. Baisley's been good as a rookie. Roby's also been pretty solid, but still, nobody, really that great. So, man, that's pretty crazy. Shai Gilgeous has been the guy, and without him, it's going to be hard to see Thunder really pull out a win here. So I'm going to say that's it here, because other than that, we got, Pistons versus Wizards. I think Wizards going to low-key win that game, though Pistons have been, playing decent basketball of late. Houston Rockets versus Timberwolves. That's, 2 of the worst teams in the entire NBA. So, I mean, it's a trash game there. Cavs versus Kings, another trash game. Memphis versus Utah. Would be surprised if Utah lose that game, but, I mean, anything can happen, of course. So, let's move on to Sunday, see what's going on there. Toronto Raptors taking on the Portland Trailblazers. Now, yes, the Toronto Raptors have been garbage for most of this season, but that's going to be an exciting game. I mean, you got some really good matchups. Lowry versus Damian Lillard. You got Pascal Siakam in that game playing pretty well. And overall, I think this is a game that can go either way. If Portland, obviously, they don't have Joseph Nurkic, so they're obviously missing some players there. And Carmelo is looking good. Obviously, CJ McCollum's back. I just think the Portland Trailblazers are going to be scoring too much for the Raptors to be able to hold on and win that game. So I think that they're going to give the Raptors another loss, like their 8th in their last 9 games. Whew, rough stretch for them. But yeah, that's going to be a tough game for the Toronto Raptors to win, especially since Portland's at home there. Am I correct? I am. No, I'm not. It's a home game for the. Well, I mean, can you really call it a home game for the Raptors now? Man, it's really tough for them, man. Playing in Tampa, you got to think about that. You got to take that all into account when you really look at their season overall. But yeah, I see a win for the Portland Trailblazers here. You got Phoenix versus Charlotte early on Sunday at 1 p.m. That's a pretty solid game. I mean, Charlotte's been playing low-key really, really solid this season. Phoenix, obviously one of the biggest surprises of the year. And the thing is, with no LaMelo Ball, that would have been such a fun matchup to watch. LaMelo Ball versus Chris Paul. But now you're going to probably see the Phoenix Suns kind of take care of business here. Even though I don't know, the Charlotte Hornets are low-key a very solid team. Terry Rozier's having a solid season. Don't forget how am I forgetting his name? What is it? Devontae Graham did last season. You can't forget what he did last season, being one of the most improved players in the league, even though he's kind of taken a back seat to what LaMelo Ball and Gordon Hayward and Terry Rozier have done this season. He is a game changer. PJ Washington's been a great big off the bench, a great big as a starter. My apologies. And I mean, this team is very solid. But when you compare them to the Phoenix Suns, who have been one of the best teams in the league this year, with Mikal Bridges being great, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton being a very solid big three, Jay Crowder adding that three-point shooting, that defense on the wing. It's just a very, very well-constructed team that has really put it all together. So I just see the Phoenix Suns winning that game. And then, in my opinion, the best game on Sunday, you got Atlanta Hawks versus the Denver Nuggets. Denver Nuggets playing very well, same thing as the Atlanta Hawks. And I easily see this game coming down to the wire. And in that case, I'm going to go Denver because I don't think anybody can really hold down Nikola Jokic. And I'm pretty sure at this point, the Nuggets are going to have Aaron Gordon and JaVale McGee. So they're going to have guys that they can toss out at John Collins. Before this trade that they made, the two trades, they didn't have anybody that can really guard John Collins. Nobody that can really go out on him and really, make him, struggle from anywhere. Because Michael Porter Jr. is not a good defender. Will Barton is a solid defender, but he's not big enough to guard a John Collins. Paul Millsap doesn't really have it on defense anymore. So Aaron Gordon is going to add a great dimension to that defense and is going to allow them to guard guys like a John Collins. And so that's in my opinion, that's the biggest difference. Of course, if they don't have him, it'll be a much closer game. And I feel like maybe the Hawks have a chance to pull it out, especially with, a guy like Trae Young and obviously Clint Capella is going to, cause problems for Jokic. But Jokic is going to dominate this game. Jamal Murray is going to cook Trae Young any chance he's got. And this is probably going to be the Denver Nuggets game to win. So that's going to wrap it up for this segment. Make sure you guys stick around because when I come back, I'm going to be talking about the top 10 power forwards in the NBA this season. Right after this.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back, everyone, to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. If you missed the last segment, I gave my predictions about the biggest games going on this weekend. If you want to see that, please go and do so. But now we're going to be talking about the top 10 power forwards in the NBA this season. And honestly, of all the lists that I have made so far, this is by far the most stacked. I mean, you got easily some of the best players in the NBA on this list. And when you go down from even 6 down, 7 down, you still got high quality starters on this team. All stars I'm talking about. And so I'm really excited to get into this list. Let's get started with number 10, Pascal Siakam. Now, if you're talking last season, you're probably looking at a top 6, top 5 power forward, but this season Siakam has certainly taken a step down from his efficiency last season. He was averaging let me go to those numbers real quick. He was averaging 23 points a game, 7 rebounds, 3.5 assists. On those numbers, he's doing a bit better, still averaging the same amount of rebounds. His assists are a bit up, but his points have taken a dip, and his percentages have taken a dip. He's shooting just under 45%, and his three-point shooting has taken a huge dip, shooting less three-point shots this year, and shooting nearly 30% from the three-point line. Terrible compared to his at least league average 36 from last season, and that's kind of what separated him, his ability to still be a very solid defender, but also spread the floor. This year has been very inconsistent for Pascal Siakam, and of course, the Toronto Raptors as a whole. So really, if you think about it, Siakam kind of is like a complete, full picture of what's going on with the Raptors, because they were expecting him, especially with that money that they were paying him, to be the number one option and their best player on their team. And honestly, he might have been a little bit overrated. Like, just the way that he plays the game, it doesn't feel like winning basketball. Like, he doesn't have a go-to. I mean, obviously, he definitely has a go-to move, but it's that spin move. Everyone's always, talking trash about him about. Like, they're always like, oh, when he had a heated argument with Nick Nurse recently, they were like, oh, and he spun his way into that argument or whatever. Like, this season's taking a spin. They always got something to say because, that's kind of like Siakam's move. But I still think he's one of the best power forwards in the NBA this season. It was very close. It was between him and Jeremy Grant. So I just went with the more established player. Jeremy Grant, this is his first season as a number one option. So obviously his percentages have taken a bit of a dip. But Siakam's kind of doing a little bit of everything, like on all ends, almost 5 assists, 7 rebounds, while shooting 20, while having 20 points per game. So, I mean, even though this is a down year for him, it's not a bad year. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's still very solid averages, and he still gives you decent defense and his length and all that. So, Pascal Siakam comes in at number 10. At number 9, I got Demar Derozan, and I know this sounds ridiculous. I mean, Demar Derozan through most of his career was playing some shooting guard, even like a little bit of small forward, or even like later in his career, a small forward. But that is the craziness of this whole positionless basketball thing. He's mainly been playing power forward for the San Antonio Spurs. Go and check Basketball Reference. That's what I always go off of. Look at the play-by-play section for DeMar DeRozan. It says he plays, I believe it said like 60% of his games, 68% of his minutes are at the power forward position. 32% at small forward. So he is technically a power forward this season, and he is my 9th best of the season. He's averaging a career high 7 assists this year, 21 points per game. Well, actually, just under 21 on solid averages. 49% from the field. Obviously, his three-point shot still isn't there. He's a really solid free throw shooter, and he gets to the line at a decent clip. About 7 free throws a game. So, and his free throw numbers are the best of his career as well. So, DeMar DeRozan is having a great season with the San Antonio Spurs. He's a big part of why they're having such a unexpected season. Everyone was expecting for a rebuild in San Antonio with all the young, core kind of being the main part of their rotation. But DeMar DeRozan at 31 has shown that he is still one of the best players in the NBA. He has, improved his playmaking, in a big way. And the crazy thing about it is that, yes, he is averaging 7 assists a game, which is a career high, but he's also averaging the lowest turnovers per game since his rookie season. That is efficient basketball. And when you're talking about that 49% from the field, he gets buckets, and he gets buckets in a big way and in an efficient way. And I love that kind of basketball. And he's still a decent defender. I mean, you look at his advanced numbers, he is, don't do that, Steve. Let me just get there real quick. He's a positive in the defensive, points made or whatever that. Let me see that. What's that? Defensive box plus minus. He's a plus on that end. And even defensive win shares, he's a 1.1. He's not a negative on the defensive side of the ball. So when he's able to give you that offensively, give you some defense, he certainly deserves to be 9th on this list. At number 8, I got John Collins, and I feel like John Collins is one of the more underrated players in the league. He's been putting up 20 and 10 for most of his career. This season's technically a down year, but he's still a very solid player. His three-point shooting's kind of gone down from 40% last season to 37% this year. His free throw shooting has gone a bit up, 84% for a big. That's incredible. His rebounding has been the biggest dip. 8 rebounds a game. He's usually averaging around 10. That's what he's done for the past 2 seasons. But I'm still enjoying what he gives you on a nightly basis. He's one of those guys that can put 20 and 10 on almost any given night. The athleticism, his rim protection. I think he's a very solid big in this league. Maybe you want to switch him and DeRozan because DeRozan has been, really good this year. But I love the upside of John Collins. I love what he's giving you, right now. And at just the age of 23 years old, he can get so much better. That's why when he was talked about in that trade market, I was like, man, why would the Hawks want to give him up? They don't want to pay him, but they'll pay Gallinari, they'll pay Bogdanovich, but they don't want to pay John Collins, one of the best young bigs in the league. I just don't see it, but still, he is a very solid player, will stretch the floor for you, will score efficiently, despite, mainly, being kind of like one of those perimeter bigs, even though he can obviously get inside and show his incredible athleticism. Love John Collins. He comes in at number 8 for me. But now you're going to see a bit of a leap here, another tier in these rankings. At number 7, I got Domantas Sabonis. Now, I think Domantas Sabonis is one of the most underrated bigs in the league. I've said that for the last 2, I believe, but still, this is a fact. Domantas Sabonis does not get the credit he deserves. The man continues to just stuff that stat sheet, gets triple doubles on a lot of nights, 20 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists. The only thing that's wrong with his game is that he is not a good defender. He can carry a team on the offensive end. In my opinion, he is a perfect second option for a championship team. A perfect second option. A guy who can score in a lot of different ways. His three-point shooting has taken a dip. It's only 30% this year, but he certainly takes the shots. What is he averaging? He's averaging 2.6 attempts this year. He needs to add that to his game to really be one of the best offensive bigs in the league, but he still shoots 52% from the field. And with that passing, he's one of the best passing bigs in the league. I never thought he was as good as Bam Adebayo, but he has certainly been that. Like, he has been better than Bam Adebayo in terms of, passing the ball. And his rebounding is just, he's one of the best bigs in the league in terms of rebounding. And what's crazy is that he handles the ball so much. He has one of the higher usage rates as a big. And that's something you really got to look at. 24%. He averages 24% usage rate this season, and I just think the fact, and he's actually a positive on the defensive side of the ball. He's not a bad defender, but it's just, I don't know. I just feel like he can add just a bit more to his game on that side. And when I'm looking at these defensive numbers, he's actually underrated defensively. I didn't think he was that good a defender, but he certainly does contribute on that side of the ball. But he is mainly an offensive big. And the fact that he can also contribute on that defensive side gives you that two-way ability. But you put him on that elbow and the restricted area, and he will go to work. He can shoot the mid-range. He can post up. He can obviously pass the ball at a high rate, and he can bang with the bigs. I love Domantas Sabonis' game. That's why he comes in at number 7. At number 6, I have Zion Williamson. And Zion Williamson is having an incredible season. I mean, the fact that he's averaging 26 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists on 62% from the field, 35% from 3. That's okay. Mid-30s. I mean, that's decent for a guy that you weren't expecting to come into this season and be able to shoot threes. Even though he's shooting, how many threes is he shooting a game? I doubt it's that many. Yeah, it's not even a 3-pointer a game, but still. You want to see him develop that'll really open up his game. He's a first-time All-Star this season, and deservedly so. I mean, the guy has just been an absolute monster. Has upped his assist numbers, has upped his defensive numbers. I mean, he could get a lot better on that end, but he certainly has the ability, the tools to be one of the best defenders in the league, and I certainly believe he will do that. So I'm super impressed with what he's been able to do. And he can easily be one of the best players in the NBA, in the couple years. I would even say maybe 2 years from now, you're talking about Zion Williamson near the top of this list. So, he certainly deserves to be number 6 on this list. And, I mean, I just couldn't put him any higher because the guys ahead of him are having incredible seasons, and their teams are kind of reflecting that in their records. The Pelicans continue to lose, and that's why I couldn't put Zion Williamson any higher on this list. He's just not affecting winning. But again, he's only 20 years old. Got to take that into account. And the fact that he's already putting up 26 points per game, the thoughts were always, can he score at a consistent rate in this NBA where you got bigger guys? It's not college kids, and he can certainly do that. He has shown that this season. At number 5, I got Tobias Harris. I mean, a career year in my opinion, even though it's not a career high. Is it a career high in points? It's not. It's very close to a career high in points. But the fact that he's doing that as a third option, he comes in, obviously he's been a first option in a lot of games because Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons have been out a couple times. He gives you some, he's a solid defender. He's averaging, I believe, not a career high in blocks, but close to that. Almost a career high in rebounds. I think a career high in assists. He's having a very, very good season. And in my opinion, obviously you got to look at Joel Embiid, his MVP type season. That's one of the reasons why Philly is as good as they are. Ben Simmons, his switchability, his ability to do anything except shoot, is obviously a reason. But Tobias Harris finally living up to that contract and being a true third option or even second option at times, since Ben Simmons is not a true scorer, it has been the biggest difference for the Philadelphia 76ers this season. And, it's just impossible not to put him fifth because, when you see no Joel Embiid, no Ben Simmons, this season, I was expecting those games to be losses. But Tobias Harris has been the main reason they've won those games. He has carried them in a lot of them. He's been super clutch this season, and he gives them that huge boost to really come out of the East. I mean, I feel like they have the best chance of defeating the Brooklyn Nets because of the fact that Joel Embiid can be a huge difference maker in any series he plays. And Tobias Harris is one of the best power forwards in the league. No doubt in my mind. Now, at number 4, I got a man who has been just lighting up the league and is just surprising everybody every game he plays, Julius Randle. I mean, my freaking goodness, what Julius Randle has been able to do this season, he has finally officially lived up to his full expectations, even though in New Orleans he had a solid season, 21 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, but that was without Anthony Davis. People were like, those numbers aren't going to be all that. He comes to the Knicks, scores almost 20, almost 10 rebounds, 3 assists, but this season, I mean, this guy has officially catapulted himself into star territory with 23 points per game, 11 rebounds, 6 assists, almost doubling his averages from previous seasons. I mean, his defense still could, use a lot of work, but, and his field goal percentages, 47% from the field on much more, field goal attempts per game, and 42% from 3 on the most most 3-point attempts he's taken for his career. Just an incredible, even free throw percentage is a career high. The man is having an incredible season. The guy is absolutely carrying the Knicks to I believe they have a 500 record, or they're one game over 500, and no one was expecting that from the Knicks this season. It's because Julius Randle has been that good. He has been absolutely carrying that team. RJ Barrett has been the second best player, but he is not a close second. It's Julius Randle and then everyone else. I'm super impressed with Randle. And, I mean, the Knicks got a star, man. They got a legitimate star. But, I mean, all that talk about Chris Bosh, that needs to be shut down. I know I'm randomly talking about that now, but I'm just saying that needs to be shut down. That he's done that for one season. He's a solid player. He needs to continue to do it, and then we can have that conversation. But I got to give my props to Julius Randle. He deserves to be the 4th best power forward on my list. But the only reason he doesn't go any higher is because there are legitimate superstars, best players in the league ahead of him. At number 3, I got Anthony Davis. And I mean, one of the best two-way players in the league. I understand he's only played 23 games this season, but even with that, I couldn't put him any lower than 3. Because when he's healthy, he is miles ahead of Julius Randle because he can put up those numbers that Randle's doing, but he can also give you all defensive player of the year type defense. So, I mean, this man is a game changer when he's on the Lakers, and obviously with LeBron, they are legitimate title contenders. Anthony Davis this season kind of having a down year, I mean, compared to, what he normally does. So, I mean, any player would want to average these numbers. 22.5 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists on 53% shooting. His 3-point shooting is just not there. That's the biggest thing, and his but his defense is still there. Not averaging those 2+ blocks a game, but I feel like once he comes back healthy, he's going to be the best player on this team, the guy that's going to lead this team to another championship season. Even though obviously LeBron is going to be just as key, this man is the one. He is the key to what the Lakers will be doing in the postseason. So Anthony Davis, in my easily number 3 power forward on this list. Now we got the MVP type players. Kevin Durant comes in at number 2. I know he's played even less games than Anthony Davis, only 19, less than half of the games that have been played so far. But there is no denying that when Kevin Durant plays, he is one of the best players in the NBA. You're talking top 3, top 4 players in the NBA. And the only reason I have him at number 2 and not number 1 is because the guy ahead of him has had an incredible season and has played pretty much every game. So Kevin Durant would normally be number 1 on my list, but it's just because of, the man is one of the best offensive players of all time. In his 19 games this season, he's averaging 29 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists on 52% shooting, 43% from 3, 87% from the free throw line. Killing it. And he's improved on the defensive end. He used to be, not that great on the defensive end, which is incredible to think because of his length, his athleticism, but he has turned himself into a great defensive player. And I think, and I've said it already, that I believe that him coming back changes that defense in a big way. Even though obviously offensively he's going to infuse even more offense on that team, which is just hard to believe. But defensively he will make them better. Not from, the 25th spot where they're at right now to top 10, but they'll be middle of the pack with Durant there, which is still a huge jump. So Durant comes in at number 2, incredible player, superstar of the highest order. And number 2 on this list. At number 1, I'm sure you guys know who this is. Got Giannis Atentacupo. It's crazy the kind of season he is having, and he's not being considered for an MVP. I've not heard him once in the MVP discussions, with averages of 29 points, 11.6 rebounds, 6 assists. How many blocks, steals is he averaging? 1.2 steals, 1.3 blocks on 56% shooting. It's incredible what he is able to do every single year. The man is a legitimate superstar. He does it every single day. He carries this Milwaukee Bucks team. He makes them what they are. And, the man can do it on both ends. Obviously, he's still got to work on that shot. But, he is a force to be reckoned with. Absolutely deserves the name Greek Freak, Superman, whatever you want to get him. Whatever you want to give him. The man does it all. He is a freak of nature and is probably one of the best. It's probably, I would give him like top 3 player in the NBA. I would put like LeBron, Durant, him. It's cool. Obviously you got other players like Kawhi, Steph that you can consider, James Harden. But Giannis is right up there in that conversation. So he comes in at number 1. And that is all she wrote for this list, man. If you guys enjoyed, I hope you did. Like, honestly, I love putting these lists together. I love talking about NBA basketball, and I hope you guys are enjoying listening to this. So as always, thank you for listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I would really appreciate it. Thank you and have a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.